Hello, my name's Linda De Silva. I am a physical therapist and I am the chair of the research committee of the Kansas Physical Therapy Association. And today I have put together a short presentation. It's mostly meant for clinicians, for students, and researchers who are interested in preparing a scientific poster. So I have included in this presentation information not just for research papers and research projects, but also for case reports. So let's dive in. What are research posters? I like to think of a poster presentation as being much less stressful than a platform presentation. So here you have a chance to talk about the work that you have done either in a research project or in the clinic one-on-one with somebody who has come to you because they are interested in your work. The key with a poster though, with a poster presentation is that you want to be able to draw people in, right? You want them to look at your poster, and even if they're 5 feet away, they should be able to look at the poster, read the title very clearly, and go, okay, this is something I'm interested in. And so today that's what we're going to focus on is how do you make your research poster or your case report visually appealing so that people can look at it from a distance and they're drawn in to come and talk to you and find out about what you did. How can you increase a poster's visual appeal? That's what we're going to talk about today. So there are different ways to increase the visual appeal of a poster, and you really using pictures and using graphs will be the key to pulling them in. You also want to make sure that it looks very open, it is easy to read, you don't use too many words, and you include content that is scientific so you know the conference that you're going to, you know who the target population is going to be, and you focus your content towards that scientific population for that conference that you're attending. The key to remember when you are planning your poster, remember that it is quality over quantity. So if you can put a few words that are really pertinent to the work that you have done and be able to showcase it well with really good quality, that is what is going to make your research poster appealing. So let's start with the title. The title has to be meaningful enough so that the person who is reading the title knows what this project is all about. So you want to avoid a really long title, but you also want to you want your title to have enough material in it so that it is able to tell the viewer exactly what you did. It has to be short enough to fit in the space that is provided. Um, the font size for a title is about 80 point font size so that it is easy to read from a distance. You want your title to be easy to read, so you want to avoid acronyms in the title as much as possible. So make sure you spell everything out, and it can be clearly seen. Now, below the title is where you will list the authors. So the first author is the person who has contributed the most to that poster. So along with the author, you would write their title and their affiliation. Usually the last author is the mentor on the project. So the listing of authors is something that you will have to decide ahead of time. This is a conversation that you will have to have with your co-authors, but the authors' names are listed along with the title, along with their titles, and then below that you would list the affiliations of all of the authors. The author font size should be about 60 point font, so that also should be easy to read, a little bit smaller than the title of your poster. So once you have your title and you have the authors and the affiliations all lined up, you start with the introduction and purpose. This really is the most important piece of your poster. So some posters will have the introduction first, followed by the purpose. I have seen other posters where they say, "This is my purpose," and they really want to start off with the purpose of the project. So this is where you showcase what you've done, right? This is what my poster is about. This is the purpose of my study. You want to keep it really concise, narrow it down to a few focused words. You can make it bulleted so it is easy to read. And then below the purpose, you would state what you anticipate, what is your hypothesis. And so all of this information is going to come from your background literature. So you have researched the topic, you have all the background in place, you have found the gap in the literature, and based on that gap, this is what you have proposed. I'm going to fill this gap by doing this research study. This is my research question, which is literally the purpose of my study. And then here is what I hypothesize the results are going to be, right? So you always have to have a purpose statement followed by a clear hypothesis. Depending on who your target audience is, you want to use the appropriate scientific terminology. So when your peers are reading that poster, they know exactly what you mean. So here are some examples of purpose statements that I have put. The first one is to assess the effect of cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia on insomnia symptoms and fatigue in individuals with MS. So you can see this is a very clear purpose statement, right? This researcher wanted to look at the effect of doing a therapy on people who had insomnia, and specifically have said what the diagnosis of that patient is. So when you read the purpose statement, you know exactly what this poster is going to be about. Here's a very different example. To engage in problem-based learning and discovery with an emphasis on self-directed learning. So when you read this purpose statement, you know exactly that they are going to be doing some kind of learning and discovery where they're going to focus on self-directed learning. Here's a great example of a poster that, you know, when you look at the title, you can tell exactly what they want to do. So let's start with the title. This is an interactive, personalized, and flipped classroom simulation experiences utilizing hemodynamic monitoring for medical education. So when you read the title, you can tell right away that they're doing some kind of simulation and they're using it for medical education. So I have actually taken away the names of the authors from this poster. But if you look at the background, you can see that the background is really concise and bulleted, so you can read through exactly what is their background information. They found the gap in the literature, and then they put their purpose statement again in bulleted form, which is very, very easy to read. So they're going to engage in problem-based learning and discovery, right? So the purpose statement really tells you what they're going to be working on. Now the rest of this poster is very appealing too, because you can see there's a lot of figures, there's a lot of pictures, and so it's so much easier to understand what they did when you can look at pictures. So now that we are done with the background and the purpose and the hypothesis statement, the next thing is we're going to talk about materials and methods. So this is the section where you will say exactly what you did and how you did it, right? So this is the place where you will describe your experimental equipment. What were some of the outcome measures that you used? Were they questionnaires? Were they objective measures? So this is the piece that can get kind of overwhelming. We have so many outcome measures that we will use, not just in research projects, but even in the clinic. We use subjective outcome measures, we use objective outcome measures, and if you try to put all of those into a poster, um, it can be a lot of information that can be difficult to read. So if you can use photographs, if you can use drawings, if you can show the procedure in a picture format, it just makes it so much easier to look at that poster. You do not have to describe all of the outcome measures in great detail, right? So if you're using um, a questionnaire, like maybe the dizziness handicap inventory, you can just name the questionnaire and you do not have to describe that questionnaire in great detail. When people are talking to you, if they have not heard of that questionnaire, you have the information, you know what it is, and you can talk about it. But you do not need to describe each and every questionnaire outcome measure on your poster in detail. So here are a couple of examples that I wanted to show. So this picture of this guy sitting, we were looking at dynamic visual acuity, which was computerized. And instead of describing that whole process in detail, here's a picture. This, and by just by looking at the picture, you can tell that the subject was sitting. There was an accelerometer on their head. They're looking at a computer screen, and that is how you are going to assess dynamic visual acuity. So the picture will draw the person in to talk to you, and then you can describe your methods in detail to them. Here's another example of a walkway, and this was a test that I was doing with the functional gait assessment. So instead of describing the functional gait assessment in great detail in the methods section, just putting this picture in of the hallway, and you can see that, hey, this is how the walkway was marked out. This is the length of the walkway. This is all information that you can provide to the person when you are talking to them. Here's another great example of what could have been a very complicated method section. So this was a poster that was put together on interprofessional education. And you can see that the entire procedure has been described in a very nice graphical manner, right? You can tell that the students would start off, so the learners started off with a huddle where they looked at the patient's chart together. And then from there, they went on to the next stage and to the next stage. And so that arrow very clearly shows exactly what the methods of this research project were. They have also described at each stage what the learners learned, how long it took. So there's a lot of information in this small piece of the poster, but it is a very nice way and a very visually appealing way of showing exactly what happened. Makes it really easy to read. Now, here's an example of a case report, right? So let's look at the case report. We'll go back to the title. This is just on one person, so you can really go into detail and say, okay, this is what I did with the patient for 3 months. Here's your background section. Here's the description. So with your case report, you can actually go into a lot more detail because it's just one person. But if you can still present a lot of the information in pictures and in graphs, it just makes it so much easier to read. So here's the examination. These are all the tests and measures that we used for this case report. Here's another great example of a poster where the story is told in picture form, right? So this was an interactive ebook that was put together for students in a DPT program. And this was for a modalities course, right? A biophysical agents course. They wanted the students to use an ebook along with the class content to see if it helped them to learn the material better. And so they started off with their purpose statement, and then they gave the background next. And then in the methods section, which is really nicely shown, they said, okay, these were the different things we did in our ebook to help our students learn. So our ebook had some video demonstration, and so you can tell, okay, here's a student putting a hot pack on someone's neck. And then in our ebook, we had an in-video quiz. So all students, once they had learned the material, could take this quiz. And then there was some interactive animations. So just by looking at those pictures, you kind of have an idea of what was in the ebook without a lot of words, which would be pretty difficult to read. Here is an example of a case report. Again, here is the background. This is the purpose of the study. They've described the case in really good detail, and then they did a really nice job of showing what tests and measures they use. So these are the tests and measures. The poster is not super easy to read because it was just a photograph taken. But you can see just by presenting the information, these are the different tests and measures we did. These were at different time points. It just kind of gives you an understanding of what was done. I just wanted to put this poster together just to show you so how interesting the title is, right? It's Help Professional Students Knowledge of Emergency Preparedness, right? We are all interested in knowing if our students know about emergency preparedness. So every poster has good information. The content is always good, but this poster is just not really easy to read. So if you look at the introduction section, this is a long introduction, which if it was bulleted to maybe 3 or 4 lines, it would open up a lot of space for the results, and the results could be spread out a little bit more. So just keep that in mind. Keep the introduction concise and bulleted. Keep the methods section the same way, concise, bulleted. If you do not have pictures for the methods section, that's fine. You can then spread out the results a little bit more so they can be seen more clearly. This is another great example of awesome content. So the content is really good. They're looking at physical therapy students' use of social media, right? We are all interested in knowing how our students use social media. It's a really well done poster. The only reason I have put it up here is because they put the abstract in along with the rest of the poster, and you really don't need to have the entire abstract in because then we have redundant information. So the purpose and methods, and then the methods get replicated again. Instead, if the abstract was not there, they would have a lot more space for the rest of their information. So you really do not need to put the entire abstract on your poster again. This is really another really important part of your poster, and this is what you have done, right? So these are my results. I did this great project, or I had this great patient in the clinic who got better, and here are the results. This is your work, so you want to highlight what you are bringing to the table. The results section is always best to present in the form of tables and graphs. So I have included a link to a YouTube video. It just kind of shows you different ways that you can present your data, different ways that your graph can be put on a poster. You want to make sure that each graph or table has a description of what is on that graph or what is in that table. So make sure that it can be a standalone. People can just look at the table and the information right below it describing what's in the table. Uh, you may not want to have too many colors because what you want is for people to focus in on your content and not be distracted by too many colors. So here's a really good example. Um, I really like this poster because here's their title, right? They are looking at the impact of a bracelet on cortical activity in stroke survivors. And so when you go to their results section, they're like, okay, here is how I want to show you the cortical activity. So it's you can see how the title and the results are connected. And so instead of having a huge description on how there were changes in the cortex, they just put the pictures up there in the results section. And it is just visually appealing, but it's also very powerful to show you exactly which areas of the brain lit up when they were using that Thera bracelet. And now we come to the conclusions. So what is your take home message? Now we all know what your purpose was, what you did, and now this is the place where you say, based on what I found, this is the take home message. Here is the place where you would explain if the hypothesis that you wrote in the beginning under the purpose statement was supported and if it was not supported. So both, you have to be able to address both. If it was supported, here's how we supported the hypothesis. If it is not supported, then here are some reasons why we think that we really did not see what we thought we would see. Clinicians are very interested in taking information that they learn at any scientific conference right to the clinic. So this is a good place to say how your study is relevant to the clinic setting. And then this would be the very last piece of your poster, and that's the reference section. So whenever you're putting together either a research project poster or a case report poster, there's going to be a lot of information and a lot of papers that you have read, right? But in the reference section, you do not want to include all of those references. Keep it short and use the references that are most pertinent to the study that you have done. So if you have a really long list of citations and if you feel like, oh, these are all very important and I want to include all of them, it might actually be a better idea to have a Word document or a handout that you can give to people, so you can just put like 2 or 3 references on the poster, or you can just write on the poster, handout with references will be provided. In that way, you don't have a bunch of references on your poster which are difficult to read, right? Instead, you can just hand out to every person who comes by and is interested in your reference section a Word document. You want to be consistent with your reference style. So whatever style you pick, AMA or APA, just make sure that all the references are listed in that same style. And then here's also where you would mention any funding source, any support that you got for your research, or any acknowledgments like people who helped you with your project or helped you make your graphs or whatever. So let's wrap it up then. So we'll put it all together in this one poster. You want a title that is brief, that is eye-catching, but that clearly describes your project. Below the title, you'd have the list of the investigators, and below that would be the institutions that these investigators belong to. When you go to the introduction, you have to be very clear. It's bulleted, very concise. This is the problem. This is what we know about it. This is what we still do not know about it. And because we did not know about it and we found this gap in the literature, we decided to do this study. And because we have all of that background information, this is what we thought would happen. So that's our hypothesis. In the methods section, these are the people we included. So these are the patients, these were the characteristics. We only wanted people between 30 to 40 years of age. We excluded people who were 40 and above. So whatever you have to mention your inclusion criteria, and then you have to also mention what your exclusion criteria were. We did these tests. Test 1, this is what it measured. Test 2, test 3, and this is how we analyzed the data. Nice way to show your method section in picture form. And then here's the results. We have some really good information that we found from the study. Here are some tables, and look, this is what the table tells you. Here are some graphs, and you have to be able to show what the graphs showed you. Here's our discussion and conclusions. This is what we found. This is how our study relates to other studies. This is how our results are similar to other studies, as well as how they are different from other studies. And here's why they may be different. This is what we are, as a researcher, are adding to the topic and to the scientific literature. Even though we did the study, there were some things that we still did not fully understand, or the next time we do the study we would consider to do differently, and that would be in your future studies. References, keep it simple. 1, 2, 3. If you have a bunch more, make a handout. And then here's our acknowledgments, and we want to thank, these are our funding sources. We want to thank people who helped us and people who gave us money. All right. So here's an example of a poster that we really want to stay away from, right? So this is a poster which has a really long title. It has all kinds of scientific jargon in the title. It may have some acronyms in there. It's really long and really does not tell you what the project is about. Then here's our introduction section. So this introduction section is really saying, okay, this is an amazing study, it's so important, and it really goes into so much detail. And remember, every time you go into a lot of detail, your font is going to get smaller and smaller, and people are not going to be able to read it. And you really do not want to include the whole abstract because it's going to be redundant, right? And then I'm really just going to include the purpose and the hypothesis in this introduction, and so when they're all clumped up together, it's going to be really difficult to read. And then here's the methods section, where I just had so much fun writing the introduction that I'm going to write everything I know and everything I did in the methods section. But it's just so much information, you're not going to be able to read it. And then I found out so many good things, right? There's a lot of results, and I'm putting everything that I found in here. And because I've put everything here, I know you can't see it, but I wanted to show it to you anyhow. And then here's the discussion. Because I did a great introduction and a great methods section, I'm going to put everything I can in this discussion. And I'm going to fit it all in, even if it is a smaller font size, right? And then here's the references. So you really don't want to have too much information on your poster. All right, so that was really the meat and bones of what needs to be in a poster, what it needs to look like. These are just a few design tips. So you can make a great poster that is very visually appealing, but if it does not fit your poster board, it just does not look very elegant. So just do your homework and find out what's the size of the poster board and make your poster so that it fits that space that is provided. Make your poster readable from at least 5 feet away. Avoid garish colors. You don't want people to be distracted by the colors you have used. You want them to be able to focus on your content. Use one font size for the entire poster. Sometimes that can be difficult to do because you cannot see the whole poster on your screen of your computer. So you may have to go through small pieces, but pick one font size and stay with it. Make sure your columns are aligned. It really looks much better if your columns are all aligned with each other. So spend that extra time taking care of that. There is a lot of information that I have not been able to provide in this presentation, but I have provided you with a resource. This is a link from the University of Kansas Medical Center from their library. And it will literally walk you through different font sizes for the title and for the introduction. So if you want more detail, feel free to visit that site. And with that, I will stop, and I hope you will consider submitting a poster for the KPTA Spring Conference. Thank you.